It's not a standalone bolt-on exercise. Sustainability is at the table when you're designing and crafting your business strategy, and it has a lens across most areas, if not all of them. So it's not a bolt-on, it's something that's embedded. So you look at, I have a simple diagram in my book which looks at the pillars of all the executives and what they need to know, from this chief financial officer, operations, human resources, marketing, sales. They all have a role to play in sustainability. And I call that out, and these are the certain skill sets you need. But then also, a sustainability strategy is embedded with where the money comes in. That's a really missing piece. What I see, a lot of companies go off and do this altruistic side of things, which is great. But when things go tough and the money's hard to come by, it's one of the first things that get cut. Why? Because they see it as non-essential. Where sustainability strategies last better is where it's aligned to where your customer values are.
Welcome to Sustainability Transformations podcast, where we explore bold ideas to drive positive change for people, community, and business. And today, so pleased we have Stewart, who is a sustainability strategist, the former head of sustainability at Fonterra and Fujitsu, the author of How to Build Sustainability into Your Business Strategy, and is on a mission to help businesses become a force for good while staying profitable. And the key goal of our conversation, we're going to explore from purpose to profits and how to build sustainability into your business strategy. Lee, thank you so much for joining us. After 2 decades of leading sustainability at global companies, why did you step away to write this book and launch the ESG strategy?
Well, thanks, Enoch. It's a pleasure to be here. And yes, 2 decades was a long time. And I feel like everyone that works in sustainability is kind of like dog years. Every year's worth about 7. But it was, the timing was right for me to have a look at how I can have a bigger impact. And I've been on the inside of companies, being the change agent inside, and I always was a champion for saying, I half wanted to be the activist on the outside, on the marches and stuff, but I thought my skills are better on the inside, and I've had some really successful achievements over that 20 years. But the timing was right to take time away from that large corporate role, which was really pressure, 12 teams meetings a day, weekends. It was just consumed your life, to finally have that space, and that space allowed me to write that book. So it was a real challenge, but it was a really hard graft, about 18 months of solid writing to get this book out there. But yeah, and the timing's right to actually have a bigger impact, not just in one company. I really want to work with thousands of companies. I've already seen how the book can actually help business leaders from all shapes, sizes, all sorts of industries actually get on with it and start making changes in your business and be that force for good that's so desperately needed.
I'm so excited with this one because as a sustainability consultant for years, now more than ever, with so much information out there, with AI helping with information, I typically use the Google and the Perplexity example where, if you're looking for information, Perplexity just cuts away the noise and this is what you need. And if you have time and you want more, you can explore more. In your book's preface, you reflect on the deeper purpose behind your work. How did your why evolve throughout your corporate sustainability journey?
Yeah, look, and it probably started before I even got my first job. I was fortunate enough to grow up in New Zealand, and New Zealand has got the most pristine environment, such beautiful outdoors, and I just had such a great appreciation for nature. I feel so fortunate to have that growing up as a kid. Now that I've traveled around the world and then seen what humanity's done to the place, and how we've wrecked parts of the world. So that sort of shaped my early thinking about, hey, we've got to do better and what we're doing. And then I was always challenged with, how can I still create a good income but have that purpose-driven organization? I naturally just fell into sustainability. I love businesses. I love working in business. Business, I think, is the great change agent lever. It's just exciting when I've been in sales and I've been in finance roles before I started honing in on sustainability. So it was a natural progression to say, how can I still work in businesses and big businesses and still have that purpose-driven element to that role?
When I speak to business consultants who help business flourish financially, they'll say, oh, I'm working with a business to be more sustainable. And that means they're looking more at the economic sustainability. So I'm curious to know, perhaps you can help, why or what is a sustainable business, not looking at only the economic aspect, but the environment and the people to make it as triple bottom line as possible?
Yeah, so really great question. And the word itself, sustainability, can mean different things to different people at different times and in different contexts, of course. When you just talked about the business need to be sustainable, we need to pay our bills and be profitable and keep our shareholders happy. What I look at of a business is obviously that financial lens is critical. You've got to stay profitable. What I look at is the business understood what their impacts are, first of all. And that's what I just call, have you looked at your own backyard? How are you treating your own people? How are you treating any products or services you do? The end of life of that. What's in your supply chain, right from cradle to grave? Have a look at those things and understand those impacts. And that sustainability lens becomes a lot easier. You can go, what can you fix? What's your sphere of influence? What is you most to direct your attention to? And I know there are 17 sustainable development goals, but when I see a company saying we're going after all 17, 12, 10, 8 of them, I kind of think, oh my God, my bullshit detectors go up, because I go, no government is even solving this. You need to hone in on 2 or 3 that really matter most to your business and do that really well, because that's where you're needed and that's where your impact can have. So when I think about what is a sustainable business, when I look at it, it's a business that understands where they are today and is doing things to fix their mistakes or fix their ledger against the sort of environment, social lenses to become hopefully a positive influence in the future. So that's what I look at.
What is a sustainability strategy in real terms, not just theory?
Yeah, look, where I look at and where I see sustainable strategies work best, it's embedded in with business strategy. It's not a standalone bolt-on exercise. Sustainability is at the table when you're designing and crafting your business strategy, and it has a lens across most areas, if not all of them. So it's not a bolt-on, it's something that's embedded. So you look at, I have a simple diagram in my book which looks at the pillars of all the executives and what they need to know, from this chief financial officer, operations, human resources, marketing, sales. They all have a role to play in sustainability. And I call that out. And these are the certain skill sets you need. But then also, a sustainability strategy is embedded with where the money comes in. That's a really missing piece. What I see, a lot of companies go off and do this altruistic side of things, which is great. But when things go tough and the money's hard to come by, it's one of the first things that get cut. Why? Because they see it as non-essential. Where sustainability strategies last better is where it's aligned to where your customer values are. And when I work with sales teams, I help them identify opportunities which they might not even seen before, where sustainability can help embed your client, open up new markets, and also create better conversations that you're having. So that's the really part I really enjoy, is going out with sales teams, working with them. Okay, who are you trying to win? What's their sustainable targets and goals? How did we align with them? How can you help that client with their challenges?
Yeah, that's very good and so practical and solves a lot of challenges. If we step back before 2015, um, where there was a corporate social responsibility. I am curious to know that, because I've been in the sustainability space in exactly just before 2015. So I think I've evolved in my understanding of what sustainability is. But is there a challenge that the directors, the seniors, where their understanding of sustainability 20 years ago perhaps was the corporate social responsibility, which may lead them towards a bolt-on rather than embedded? I am curious to know. I thought I'll share that as a background to my question. So now my question is there any carry-on perception which perhaps needs to evolve from that, an extra nice thing to do, corporate or CSR into sustainability? I'm curious to know.
Yeah, I think when you sort of hit the nail on the head around the 2013, 2015, the boom of sustainability reporting came out. Everyone had read, let's write our sustainable report. 80, 90 page, I've written 100 odd page documents that I will honestly say have only been read by other sustainability professionals. And that's where you sort of, they call it traditional CSR reports. The evolution I'm seeing coming on is and it's a so what question I get. You're reporting for the sake of reporting. And what are you actually doing? What are you changing? What are you moving the needle in? And come back to my previous thing, where are you screwing up, or where are you damaging the planet or society? What are you doing to fix it? And how are you measuring that piece year on year, and the improvements, and what's your goals and targets around that? So it's getting more focused, laser focused. Think of how a company reports their financials. Sustainability and non-financial reporting is coming aligned with that. So we're going to have to say, you set a carbon target, you're supposed to have hit this target by then. Why not? Where are you currently at? What are your challenges? What are you going to do to fix it?
You've shared around their why, but How important is business leaders defining their why, which covers a lot of stakeholders, not only for shareholders, but also covering customers, employees, their workers, how they can define their why, which covers all stakeholders.
Yeah, a really important piece of work, which I touch on in the book, is how do you focus on what matters the most? And most sustainability officials will know this exercise called a materiality assessment. And there's new terminology, a single and double materiality, but that's really looks at what your business is doing, but your impact on planet and society. I use that opportunity as an exercise to go out to customers, go out to your staff, go out to, if you go out to government, even NGOs. I've interviewed Greenpeace and World Wildlife Fund and other things, and really understand what their perspective is and what they expect from you as an organization. That helps you craft your message. You will not be able to pacify every stakeholder, but it's important you do use that opportunity to listen. And I recommend you do that once every 2 or 3 years. You go out wider. I mean, when I was at Fonterra, I think we went out to over 500 different stakeholders in surveys, interviews all around the world to get what should Fonterra, as New Zealand's largest emitter and largest business, be focusing on in sustainability. We've got some really good insights about that. That helped inform the board strategy, and also there's obviously the sustainability team where we needed to focus on. So that really helps with understanding the why. When I hear a CEO saying, we're just going to go and work with this charity, and I go, well, why is that? Is that the CEO's pet project? Why? What was the rationale behind that? Is there a shared value? Like, it makes sense for me, like big IT companies should work on getting more girls into technology and STEM because they need that talent down the line. These are sort of where you look at those nuances that can happen when you do good. Make sure it has that mutual benefit as well, because that'll make it stand the test of time.
Where do most companies go wrong when they're trying to embed sustainability into their core business planning?
Oh, sorry, was the question where they go wrong or
Yeah.
where? Oh,
Where
yeah, yeah, yeah,
where did they go wrong in terms of
yeah.
being aligned with their business planning? So that's what I mean. So go wrong,
Yeah.
make sure they don't go in the wrong direction.
Yeah, yeah. So that materiality assessment is really key. What I've seen a lot of companies do will do a massive, big brochure, sustainability targets, big fanfare, big PR releases, but then leave it up to one or two people in the organization. And it's not embedded. So the biggest mistake I see is that it's not embedded. And that's where I look at the simple framework which I designed. It's called the Triple C framework. And I think if you follow this, you're strongly 80+% your strategy will work. The first C I talk about is confidence. So that's understanding what are the global macro issues of climate change, waste, diversity and inclusion, and what do they mean to your business and your context. Um, then there's the commitment. As we talk about the materiality phase that we talked about, what focus on what matters the most, what targets you need to set, what are you going to stand for. And that final piece where I see a lot of people go wrong is that consistency, the final C. And that is the governance model that is not reliant on a sustainability person or team. It's reliant on every executive around the table and even in the board is responsible for certain parts of that strategy and report on that. Operations might hold the carbon target. HR obviously look at diversity and inclusion. Sales and marketing might work with customer engagement and responsible and report on that. And some clients I work with, they report monthly on their updates and they roll up every quarter. Some of them are reporting to the board on their piece. It's not the sustainability function, it's the business function that needs to do that.
You've advised executive teams and boards. What is the key skill to securing senior leadership buy?
Key skill is I think I've made many mistakes, so I'll maybe talk about what I've went wrong, where I pushed too hard, too fast. Typically, boards are more conservative that I've worked with, a lot more senior, older. They need to be really sure, especially with this as new topic to them. And I've made a mistake of trying to push for a climate target in front of a board when I didn't know what carbon was and the context of carbon on their business. So I had a real highlight to me was you've got to take it slowly. You've got to lay breadcrumbs of information to get there, but it will take a bit longer. But once you have them confident and knowing what the issues are, you can easily move to commitment phase and then the consistency phase. So that's definitely key.
Good timing is good for a lot of things. What practical governance frameworks or models do you recommend in boards to embed sustainability?
Yeah, look, there's many models out there, but I really just kind of keep it really simple. From your materiality assessment, I try to get my companies to work on 3 or 4 key things, and then you've got an executive responsible for that. So one might be environment. It might be just an environment pillar. One client's just got environment and it's climate and waste. So head of operations is responsible for that. He has his team report quarterly on the carbon targets and waste and also the programs of what they're doing. It's wrapped around and that's solid locked in. And then the other person is sort of a chief people officer, is looking at diversity, inclusion. Mental health's been a big issue coming up in a lot of clients I'm talking with, programs around that, supporting your staff and team. And then the other pillar was for governance and community. So you've got the CFOs on the governance, communities back with the COO, but they're looking at what do they do and enhancing the communities where they operate and what, and not just employment, how are they advancing individuals that work in their company with greater education opportunities and so forth around that. So that's the sort of distributed governance model, which everyone's on the hook to report and stand by and also highlight the challenges to the team as well and where you need more help is really important around that.
Yeah, that's good. So perhaps we can demystify a few technical areas. How should companies start setting climate targets?
Yeah, look, big one. First of all, you just got to know your carbon baseline, and there's a lot of free tools out there, free training, greenhouse gas protocol website. Go and do that free training. I have every grad that I've worked with gone through it. Just go do that course. It's free, so you understand basic corporate carbon accounting. Then again, I would strongly recommend you can gather all the data up, but finance is a good person to help with. Your procurement people, all your energy bills, your fuel bills, and so forth. Obviously, if you're manufacturing, there's lots of other things you might have gas, diesel, and so forth. Make sure you get good collection of the data. But before you even finish that, I would recommend you get out of your office and go see the sources of the biggest emissions in your business, where they come from and what they are, whether it's a truck, manufacturing, or cases for me, I've been on farms, production lines. Go and spend a day looking at what that is and asking people in the field, how can we reduce our carbon emissions? What can we do better? Generally, I reckon there's answers in your business today that for people on the factory floors, wherever they are, will have some ideas that you can actually think about. So it's not just the reporting side. When you report your carbon emissions, you've got to have a look at how we're going to reduce that. What is the strategy? What are the business cases we need to get up? How we're going to finance these things as well. So have that lens across the business.
What is scope 3 and why is it becoming such a hot button issue?
Yeah, geez. So let's just talk about the scope 1, 2, and 3 is how we measure carbon emissions. So just quickly, scope 1, I just described briefly as stuff you burn. So if you have a car that's, you put the petrol in it, that's the diesel, petrol, fuel, coal-fired power station, anything you burn, gas, that's scope 1. Scope 2 is the electricity that you and I are using right now. It has a carbon component to the grid. So here in Australia, fortunately, a lot of it's still coal-fired power stations. So each kilowatt has a kilogram element of carbon used to it. So that's scope 2. Scope 3 is the big doozy. This is where a lot of information is needed, but that's emissions throughout your supply chains. For instance, the scope 3, I'm working with a large retailer. They sell Nike shoes. What's the carbon emissions of the Nike shoes that they all sell? And if they go to landfill, is it off gas methane? All these other things are really hard to measure. How long, like they sell toasters, how often are they used and how much energy they consume? What happens end of life as well? So it's a really hard measurement to quantify. We're getting better at it all the time. Why? Very key question is, why does it matter? Big companies are now setting climate targets and they're setting targets across all scopes of emissions, including scope 3, which means I've been representing some clients going out to their suppliers saying, do you have a carbon target? Do you have a target in line with science? Is it science-based certified, or science-based target initiative, or is it otherwise? How far away are you from setting one? Because we need to set one for all our suppliers. So you'll see even if you're a small supplier supplying some of the bigger guys, these questions are now coming to you. And I'm working with those clients right now about how to answer them and also working with some of the big clients about how do they vet their supply chains. You'll see that flowing through to all sizes of business. It's a key one to watch.
The finance sector and the insurance sector. So, if I took the UK, there's a lot of conversation around the Bank of England requiring financial institutions to report climate related financial disclosures. And the insurance, there is some quiet buildup of insurance premiums. Can you share how those climate related financial disclosures mean for businesses?
Yeah, so I've been working with clients in New Zealand was actually the first to mandate this. So clients have been working with, they're in their third year of cycle. It's just come mandatory here in Australia. It's called ASRS, Australian Sustainability Reporting Standards. Essentially, what this means, they followed this sort of framework, a global framework of the Task Force for Climate-related Disclosures, related to TCFD. Sorry, it's a bit of a tongue twister. There are far too many acronyms in this industry, but what you're looking at is what you'll get with sort of climate-related disclosures, looking at what is your climate risks and opportunities. And a lot of people just look at the risks, but there's also opportunities. And what we mean by that is with the scenario, say, of a 1.5 degree warming or to a 2 or dare I say 3 degree warming, what are these sort of scenarios going to impact on your business in the next 5, 10, 50 years, even to the end of the century? So really critical when I was doing this for a large agriculture company, actually Fonterra, you're looking at what is grass growth going to be like with a 2 degree rise, and how is that going to sustain your agriculture? Is there going to be more droughts? Are there going to be more floods? Sea level rise? Are we going to lose some more land and so forth? So what do these scenarios play out, and how do they impact you financially? But also there's going to be other opportunities there. So for instance, when I was at Fonterra, they're the lowest carbon dairy provider in the world with their milk powder. So there's attributes for the global market as this becomes more premium. As we mentioned before, scope 3, it's a dairy ingredient, so it's a lower carbon element. So that opportunity is an opportunity in a high degree world because it's going to be a scarcer resource. It's a hard one. What I've seen with a lot of companies, chief finance, getting their head around it because it's ambiguity. You're running workshops thinking about throwing up scenarios. It's hard. You're looking forward, not backwards, which finance typically looks backwards in the rear vision mirror. You're looking forward, not 2, 3, 5. You're looking at 20, 30 years, plus. So that's really hard. And it's the ambiguity I find when working with finance teams that they're sort of getting their head around grappling it has been quite difficult and challenging for them.
Curious to know what is the typical dynamic in board teams that allow them to look in 10, 15, 20 years compared to just 3 years short term? Is there any pattern you've observed where it allows board ability to think that long term and
Yeah,
also solve their short term? Yeah.
yeah, definitely. And you really hit the critical thing on the head there. Really, boards are looking 2, 3 years, or strategy cycles are 3 years. Thinking about, and most of these board members are quite old. These are dates beyond their natural life, way beyond. So it's hard for them to conceptualize these sort of things. Where I see boards do really well is this is a regulation. It's forced upon them, but those that see it as and the reluctant complier going, oh God, we've got to do this compliance, what all this crap, what a waste of time, will typically waste more time and spend more money than those that say, okay, we have to do this anyway. Where's the opportunity for our business in this? Where can we seek out new markets, or where can we build in better risk models or understand our supply chain better? Those companies that seek the opportunity around this do better, spend less, and actually find insights that are quite useful for the whole business strategy and planning.
Yeah, that's good. Around innovation and tech, tell us about your work developing award-winning tools like the digital owl and the data center energy efficiency tools at Fujitsu.
Yeah, so Fujitsu was a lovely role. I was there for almost 8 years, and I was head of sustain for Oceania. And we in Australia got a portfolio of data centers, which are just massive. Even back then, 10 years ago, they're now tripled in size. But I calculated one of these data centers I was working with used more energy than the town I grew up in, New Zealand, right? So it was really important that we sort of really doubled down on energy efficiency. Cost of energy was going up. The emission factors were quite high. So there's a double whammy there of saving costs, but also reducing emissions, and really work with the team to design and get through the first, what's called energy rated, neighbours rated systems. There's neighbours is a rating system in Australia for buildings. We brought the first one to market for data centers and the portfolio over there. And it helped us win some new clients too, because we were pioneering that. That was really, really great to align with the sales teams. And these are big deals in tens, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of contracts. So that was very rewarding. The other, even more rewarding, I thought, was the Digital Hour project you mentioned there. This is coming on eight years ago, using AI, early iterations of AI to find endangered species in the outback of here in New South Wales in Australia. And this came about because there's new policemen wear body-worn cameras, and we're doing that technology and identifying facial recognition. And I said, well, could that actually identify a endangered, like a koala or a endangered rock wallaby or certain plant species? I said, yeah, sure. So I was in talking to the New South Wales government and Saving Our Species. They have this problem about identifying and finding where there's rare planters on this area called Mount Dangar, and they'd fly helicopters up with spotters to try and find it. And I sort of said, well, why can't we use a commercial drone and video that, survey the land, and then run it through the AI engine, train the AI engine to find this plant? And the drone uses nothing compared to a helicopter in terms of jet fuel, and that was their biggest source of emissions for the Department of Environment was helicopter jet fuel. Here we go. We ran that pilot. I got some seed funding to do that, and it was hugely successful. It worked, and it's been rolled out to other species as well. So it's been a great, fascinating example of where using technology can help enable lower emissions and better outcomes.
Ah, that's nice. So, how do innovation and tech intersect during sustainability strategy in ways leaders might overlook?
Yeah, look, I suppose when you understand your biggest source of emissions or biggest problems you have, always make sure you've got, is there a technology out there that can help with this? Is it just the measurement technology, but can we go beyond just maybe measurement? Can we go beyond controlling or reducing, so forth? Have that lens across the biggest, chunkiest problems you have. There generally will be an option to actually innovate, partner with people, look at your IT department. Many times I've brought the chief information officer, head of IT, and a head of environment together to help solve problems for the business. Collaboration is definitely key.
Exploring the final segment around the trends, the expectations in the horizon. What are some exciting trends in sustainability and ESG that you envisage coming up?
Yeah, look, I'm very heartwarming when I go to conferences now. Instead of 50, 100 people, there are 400, 600, 700 people going to these conferences, which is great. And I've been going to them for maybe 20 years, right? So there's a lot more people interested. There's a lot more people engaged and wanting to do that. So that's giving me a lot of a boost to say, hey, look, there's more people wanting to do better and learning more and seeing it as a positive career move to them. So that's key trend is definitely more people coming into the area, wanting to do more, apply their skills. The other positive thing I also see is that there's a lot more regulation coming, but not regulation for regulation's sake. That regulation gives me the opportunity to talk to the board and use that as the opportunity to leverage the other parts, not just the requirements of regulation, helping businesses become more resilient with understanding climate risks, for example, is really cool. That's giving me a lot of hope and awareness. And then finally, what you mentioned for the technology is great. I think there's a lot of tech we're not even using properly today, especially around energy efficiency. But there's a lot, I go to a lot of these green tech startups. There's a lot of really cool ideas coming out from people much younger and smarter than I am and I will ever be. And that gives me a lot of encouragement.
That's exciting times ahead. So, what's a virtual chief sustainability officer, and when should a company consider one? Would you say?
Yeah, so I've sort of pioneered this over the last 3 years when I didn't want to go back into another full-time role, but I still wanted to work for multiple different industries. So I've been working for three clients. One's a large retailer, a hotel chain in the Pacific, and also an infrastructure company, all very diverse, all at a certain stage of not knowing where to start with sustainability. And I'm very thankful that I've been working with them for over a year, 2 years now. Two of those three clients have hired their first sustainability manager that I've helped train and now mentor into the role. So what you do is you at a fraction of the cost, you can get the expertise and we get you set up. And then during that process, I help identify talent or we help recruit talent. And you might be able to get it at a project management level because they're coming in to implement the strategy that we've already designed. So, and then we hold their hand through their first board executive meetings and stay as their sort of on call support for new regulations, customer bids, and so forth. So it's a really good way of lowering the cost and getting better access to talent as well.
What is your final thoughts to business leaders or sustainability officers as a key takeaway message from our conversation today?
Yeah, first of all, anyone working in sustainability, I know it's tough. It's hard. It's a hard graft. Stick it out. It is worth it. There are other people out there. Reach out. I know I've gone through hell and back many times, but there's always a supportive network out there, and I recommend you tap into that because it can be a very lonely role, especially in the large corporates. For the business people who are probably thinking new to say me, trying to figure out what does this all mean, start doing something. Don't just talk about it. Start understanding where your biggest impacts are and God, have an idea of how to fix it and just don't be paralyzed about doing the wrong thing. It's better to make a start than just not do nothing at all. So do some things. It could be as simple as just sorting out your recycling, okay? But do something. Don't just talk about it. We're over all that. Make some change, make an impact, and use that to grow and do better things.
That's great. A huge thank you to Lee Stewart for your time with these incredible insights. It's been a practical session around the key strategies and technologies and making sure you get a buy-in. One of the key parts you mentioned around not pushing hard too fast, but building. And that's such a powerful aspect and a whole lot more. If listeners really like those key concepts, ideas, the strategies, the practical solutions, where can they find more from your work, Lee?
Yeah, look, they can find my book is How to Build Sustainability Business Strategy. It's very easy to find on Amazon. Look up the author, Lee Stewart, Leestewart. You can download it on Kindle as well. So, yeah, it's a very practical guide. I recommend getting a hold of it. And please, by all means, connect with me on LinkedIn as well. If you've got a question or any feedback, happy to help. And just wish you all the best.
I'll share the link for your book and at least LinkedIn in the description so you can easily access that. So, yeah, thanks, Lee.
Cheers. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.